Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu stared with wide eyes, beyond startled. He had a grotesque and variegated feeling and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just then, that sword light had avoided him and went straight for the heart of Fashin's brows, penetrating his skull. Even if he wanted to stop it, he couldn't make it in time. The aim of this sudden sword light was to slay him, the heavenly devil cult master. However, when he clashed with Fashin, he had used Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, so his Buddha rays shot to the heavens, while Fashin had used great educational heavenly devil scriptures, which gave him a severe devil nature. The owner of the flying sword was over a mile away from them, so with the hazy moonlight, he had simply sent the sword flying based on the rays he saw from afar, taking Fashin's life. The retainers of the Crown Prince naturally had extremely high abilities and cultivated orthodox sword techniques. On top of that, Fashin had been already heavily injured by Qin Mu, and so he lost his life carelessly just like that. Beside the boundary stone, the dragon Qilin was staring at the Elefeu. Before the two strange beasts could even start to fight, the battle had already ended. The Elefeu let out a sigh of relief when he saw Qin Mu not killing Fashin. Yet to its surprise, a sword light came from nowhere. It was so sudden that the Elefeu had no time to react. The figures began flying over, and Qin Mu didn't think twice before moving back onto the dragon Qilin. When the Elefeu saw Fashin's death, its mind was left in a huge mess, and the creature was overwhelmed by the dragon Qilin's aura. Qin Mu jumped onto the back of his mount, and the dragon Qilin immediately fled from the scene as fire clouds grew under his feet. "That head is mine," one of the Crown Prince's retainers shouted out. "No one shall take my credit." He came to the boundary stone and pulled out his flying sword from the heart of Fashin's brows. When he got ready to cut Fashin's head off, he was slightly stunned. How come he doesn't have hair? As the other retainers rushed after, they were bewildered when they saw Fozi riding on the dragon Qilin to escape while the Elefeu that guarded Great Thunderclap Monastery stood motionless. Qin Mu turned his head back, and the heavenly devil cult master smiled towards these retainers of the Crown Prince under the moonlight, making their hearts fall into the abyss. Heavenly devil cult master. The retainers of the Crown Prince felt their whole bodies turn cold as they thought what to do next. Since the one riding the dragon Qilin was heavenly devil cult master, there was only one person that could be lying there under the boundary stone. They turned their suddenly stiff necks and saw the retainer with the sword standing helplessly. He stretched his hand out to try and block the sword hole in the heart of Fashin's brows, but there was no use. He stood up, thinking to drag the body away, but then saw the rest of his companions when he turned his head around. This retainer was out of his wits and turned around to look at the corpse of Fozi under the boundary stone before looking back at the other retainers. He then looked at the corpse again, repeating the movement of his head for the third time. "What do I do?" He sounded like he was sobbing. "We all came here together, so you guys can forget about leaving me alone. If you sabotage me, you guys won't escape death as well. Killing Fozi is a grave crime, and the Crown Prince will execute all of you as well." The other retainers also had no idea how to proceed, but then, one of them said with a parched throat, "We might as well go all the way, burn the corpse and eliminate all evidence, pushing the blame onto Heavenly Devil Cult Master. There's already more than enough shit on Heavenly Devil Cult Master, so one more thing won't make a difference." Someone in the crowd reminded, but that Elefeu saw what happened. They all turned to look at the Elefeu. "Kill this deer and no one will know." They sprung into action, and countless flying swords flew out from their sheaths, coming down from the sky like sword rain which came for the Elefeu. The body of the Elefeu trembled as the animal revealed its true body, which was dozens of times larger. The Elefeu braved the sword rain and charged at the group, ignoring the flying swords. They could prick its skin, but not injure its organs. A huge bang could be heard when the huge deer horn stabbed two people and smashed them into the boundary stone. Two new bloodstains appeared on the boundary stone. The other two people immediately flew away, but this Elefeu was not an unusual strange beast. It had the face of a horse, the hooves of a cow, the tail of a donkey, and the horns of a deer. Listening to the Dharma of Great Thunderclap Monastery for close to 200 years, it had cultivated remarkable abilities and was incomparably strong. The elephant shook its head, and the deer horns flew out. One of them pierced through the chest of one man, nailing him to the ground. In the meantime, the elephant caught up to the other person and stomped him to death. That strange beast then shook its head, and the deer horns flew back to its head. After looking back at the corpse of Fozi under the boundary stone, the elephant turned and sprinted back to Great Thunderclap Monastery. Even though flying swords covered the creature's body, they created only external injuries. There was no decrease in the running speed. Not long later, the sky had brightened, and a few elderly monks came to the place of the boundary stone under the lead of the elephant. Those old monks examined the situation with grim expressions. Fozi actually died just like this. A yellow-robed old monk frowned and said, the sword wound was indeed left behind by the retainers of the Crown Prince, not the sword skill of Heavenly Devil cult. It also a match with the weapons of those retainers. It's just that Rulai is now discussing with Crown Prince the great plans regarding the future of the world, to change the dynasty and correct the reform of Emperor Yangfeng, returning everything to its origin. This is a plan of extreme importance. If it was spoiled by this, it's saddening to see Fozi pass away, but it's only mortal flesh that's gone. He can finally be free from the struggles in this sea of suffering. Another old monk said, we can't let the death of Fozi spoil the plans of extreme importance. Rulai doesn't need to know about this incident, it's enough that we the Arhats of the Hall of Arhats knows about this. However, Fozi is dead, and the retainers of the Crown Prince are also dead, we can't hide this from them. We will tell Rulai and the Crown Prince that it was Heavenly Devil Cult Master who did this. Out of goodwill, Fozi sent Heavenly Devil Cult Master out of the monastery, but Heavenly Devil Cult Master launched a sneak attack on him at the boundary stone, killing Fozi. The retainers of the Crown Prince had gone to stop him, but they were all ruthlessly killed by him as well. The expressions of yellow-robed old monks changed, and an Arhat shouted out, a monk cannot lie. The old monk's long eyebrows fluttered as he said with an emotional sigh, there's no need for you guys to say anything, I'll do it. After saying it, I'll return to a normal life and leave the monastery. In comparison to the future of Great Thunderclap Monastery, what's the harm in giving up my clean reputation? Excellent, excellent. Senior brother is righteous. All the monks put their palms together and paid their respects to him. When the monks from Hall of Arhats returned to Great Thunderclap Monastery, old Rulai had already finished the discussion with Eternal Peace Crown Prince. He got up to send him off and said, Your Highness should immediately return to the capital city. If the Emperor dies and the world is without a ruler, I'm afraid the other princes will assume the throne if Your Highness is not in the capital city. Eternal Peace Crown Prince said sternly, Buddha is absolutely right. That long-eyebrowed monk came forward at that moment and said, Revered one of the world, Heavenly Devil Cult Master has done much evil. Fozi had gone to send him out, but his life was taken. The retainers of the Crown Prince had gone forward to save Fozi, but their lives were also lost, so their souls went to paradise. Eternal Peace Crown Prince was furious. That devil actually dared to do something like this? I didn't find trouble with him, so he came to kill my people instead. Buddha, this devil even dares to kill Fozi, is truly impudent, we can't just let him off like this. Old Rulai took a look at the Arhats from the Hall of Arhats. They looked down, not speaking a word. Your Highness does not need to trouble himself with this matter, return to the capital city as soon as possible. Great Thunderclap Monastery will settle the incident regarding Heavenly Devil Cult Master. Old Rulai had a warm expression as he looked towards the long-eyebrowed monk. Chao Mai, how long have you been in the Hall of Arhats? Revered one of the world, it's already been 209 years. Old Rulai said in an amiable manner, You shall settle the incident regarding Heavenly Devil Cult Master, for that, I shall allow you to return to your normal life. Monk Chao Mai was greatly shaken. He raised his head to look at Old Rulai, but Old Rulai had already turned around to speak to Eternal Peace Crown Prince. Your Highness, return to the capital city, there must be no delay. Eternal Peace Crown Prince agreed and hurried down the mountain while thinking to himself, this Buddha sure is a profound mystery. Monk Chao Mai tied it up and also left the mountain thinking to himself, old rule I had that I lied, so he chased me out of Great Thunderclap Monastery without me bringing it up, as expected of the wise and awakened one. This is a realm I can never reach in my life, so I should just make use of this body to do more things for Great Thunderclap Monastery. After going down the mountain and walking a short distance, he suddenly heard a voice coming from the sky. Monk Chiang Mai, why don't you come with me? Monk Chiang Mai raised his head and saw a luxurious flying ship which had stopped in the sky. The Crown Prince stood on the bow of that ship, inviting him over. His heart moved slightly, and he immediately rose into the sky and landed on the ship with a greeting. Your Highness, I'm no longer a monk, the surname of my normal family is Su, my name is Justa, he thought for a while before breaking into laughter. I haven't used my secular name for over 200 years. It's been so long that I've already forgotten it, please excuse me, Your Highness. Even if you return to your ordinary life, you're still half a monk and half an ordinary person, I'll just call you Su Chiang Mai, said Eternal Peace Crown Prince. Su Chiang Mai expressed his thanks and said, I will go with this name. What did Your Highness call me for? Heavenly Devil Cult Master. Eternal Peace Crown Prince said, this devil from the devil cult has too many tricks up his sleeves, and even Sun Nantuo died from his schemes without any traces to be found. When Imperial College was having holidays and he planned to return to Great Ruins alone, I ordered people to spread the news and lured experts from all over to give chase, but he was still able to escape alive. I've also received news that the strong practitioners that chased after him, Lu Wenshu from Poor Logic Sect, Wanderer Qin Yu, Arhat Pu Shan, Daoist Ku Yi, and even Daoist Qing Shan had been killed. Heavenly Devil Cult's power is no weaker than that of Great Thunderclap Monastery. I'm afraid that if you chase after him, you will only be harmed by him. Su Changmei's heart trembled. Lu Wenshu, Wanderer Qing Yu, these people were all famous existences, especially Daoist Qing Shan. He was a righteous practitioner of life and death realm. His abilities were no weaker than those of Su Changmei himself. Even Daoist Qing Shan had been killed? Eternal Peace Crown Prince then added, I was waiting for you here to remind you to take your time in making a decision. You are not out to kill just anybody, it's the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, the #1 sacred ground of the Devil Path. Why don't you follow me back to the capital city and plan slowly? Su Changmei nodded in agreement. Your Highness, revenge must be taken for Fozi. Eternal Peace Crown Prince smiled. I don't only want to take the head of Heavenly Devil Cult Master, but for whole Heavenly Devil Cult to be uprooted and completely eradicated. This is what your Great Thunderclap Monastery would agree with without prior consultation, I'm sure. Don't worry, even though you're no longer an Arhat of Great Thunderclap Monastery, after I ascend to the throne, I'll allow you to found your own sect and be your own abbot, to become Buddha. In Kunlun Jade Void Mountains Dao sect, a Dao child ran over in a hurry to Dao Master and said, Dao Master, Rulai has come to visit. The other asked quickly, how many people? One person. Old Dao Master let out a sigh of relief. Then he has not come to fight. Quickly, invite? Never mind, I shall invite him personally. After a while, Old Rulai and Old Dao Master sat down, and he dismissed his followers. Old Rulai also didn't beat around the bush and said directly, I have met Eternal Peace Crown Prince. Old Dao Master's heart trembled slightly, and he said, the Crown Prince is not as good as His Majesty, he's not a wise ruler. His Majesty knows how to rule the country too well, which is why there's this natural disaster. Dao brother, look at this snow disaster that caused the people to struggle for their lives. Do you want an even greater disaster to descend? Dao sect should know about the records from Morning Emperor Emptiness era, right? Old Dao Master mumbled and said, your Buddhism refers to it as Morning Emperor, Emptiness era, Emptiness calamity, whereas my Dao sect refers to it as Founding Emperor era, Founding Emperor calamity. I've also seen the records of Founding Emperor era and the prospering divine kingdom that had been wiped out. Countless living beings had suffered from that calamity and were turned to ashes. I'm quite worried about this matter. After a moment, he continued, a small country with a small population that discards conventional wisdom, which is held holy and sacred, this is the lesson my Dao sect learned from that Founding Emperor calamity. With a small country and few people that don't believe in any experienced and wise saints, everyone could live well and happy, without any worries. Wouldn't that be excellent? It was fine in the past, with small countries with small populations listening to the orders of their sect. We need a new emperor. A dead emperor is better than all living things being dead, said old Rulai. Dao Master gave him a glance and asked, "What benefits did the Crown Prince promise you?" Old Rulai shook his head and said, "I didn't ask for any benefits from him." Dao Master smiled. "I believe you." Since they were done, he rose and said, "That Dao sword of mine hasn't been used for a while. I wonder if it has turned blunt, if it'll be able to slay a true dragon." Old Rulai rose to express his thanks. Much thanks to senior brother for assisting. As Qin Mu traveled forward, he saw desolation caused by the disaster. There were starving people everywhere, small and large tragedies sprung up everywhere, and plague ran amok. When compared to the peaceful territory of Great Thunderclap Monastery, these places were simply hell. Luckily, there were numerous college and primary school scholars sending medical help to suppress the plague, or else the disaster would have become even more severe. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had constructed many primary schools and colleges to replace private schools, and they revealed their worth at this moment. Even though the power of each and every one of these scholars was weak, they were astonishing together. They were equivalent to numerous small sects. Qin Mu saw officers with their men wiping out demons and monsters that were taking advantage to create even more chaos. The county magistrate was even guarding the land personally and advising the immigrants to return home since the rations the emperor sent for disaster relief would be transported soon. There were even some disciples of Dao sect and Buddhism helping disaster victims, but they were more casual. Compared with the power of the empire, their reach was limited, and they would only help wherever they went. Some people took this chance to impart their teachings and give birth to numerous evil cults, but they were all half-baked. This level of natural disaster can't wipe out such an empire, Qin Mu thought to himself. The new crops were already planted, so as long as they waited until the harvest season, the people would be appeased. The timing of this disaster in Eternal Peace Empire was extremely strange, though. It happened precisely after the entire empire was thrown into chaos and most of the rations had been exhausted by the wars. With this snow disaster added into the fray, it was enough to shake the foundation of the empire. I wonder if Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has returned to the court, if the Emperor is still sending disaster relief. Also, where did this natural disaster come from? This is not something that sacred grounds like Dao Sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery can create, but that requires a god's power. He raised his head to look up at the sky in suspicion. Why had this happened? Why did heaven want a disaster to descend on eternal peace? For the orthodox teachings of gods in the human world? Before eternal peace, it was a world that was ruled by sects which formed countries of all sizes. Some of these sects had ancient inheritances and legends which said that they had been created by gods. In that case, was it because the orthodox teachings of gods in the human world were being wiped out by Eternal Peace Empire which angered the gods into sending such a natural disaster? Or was there a more profound reason behind this? Qin Mu found some disciples of Heavenly Devil Cult and made a few inquiries. Heavenly Devil Cult was currently following the authorities to send disaster relief and most of the disciples in the cult had been mobilized, covering all of the lands. The hall masters of every hall had also donated money out of their pockets and were all beyond broke. The problem was that some merchants were still hoarding to profit and some influential families were not selling. The emperor was angered and killed a bunch of them, then found some officials that took bribes and bent the law, coveting the money for disaster relief, and so he killed another bunch of them. There were also some people that took this chance to sell official positions, and the emperor killed one more bunch. A Heavenly Devil Cult disciple who had followed the emperor to send disaster relief had seen quite a number of things. When he spoke, his face was wide with a smile full of exultation. The emperor even faces assassins, most of whom were existences of the cult master level. However, there were civil and military officials in the entourage, and the emperor personally went into battle as well. He was extremely powerful. It's a pity cult master was not there. Qin Mu asked, who are the strong practitioners that had tried to assassinate the emperor? I've heard it was Teacher Po, True Lord Tian, and those guys. There were also some strong practitioners from beyond the Great Wall. Qin Mu's expression changed slightly. Alliance with the cult master level strong practitioners from beyond the Great Wall? Is Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor back? I haven't seen him. Chinmu mumbled for a moment, then asked, where is the Emperor now? He's at Bazhu Prefecture, that's 5,000 miles away from here. That heavenly devil cult disciple soon added, the Emperor had gone to the south and cleared the influential families that had refused to sell their rations before going to the north and is now at Bazhu. That place is still considered stable. Chinmu composed himself and asked, what about the capital city? Which of the first-ranking high officials are left behind? The Crown Prince was left behind to supervise the empire and the officials related to him. Chinmu's expression became grim. The capital city was supposed to be supervised by the Crown Prince, yet he had run to Great Thunderclap Monastery. Teacher Po, True Lord Tien, and their friends who had almost died in the hands of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had been saved by old Rulai, who had promised they would convert to Buddhism and not meddle with the affairs of the secular world. Yet Teacher Po and the rest had run out again. When he added the Crown Prince paying a visit to old Rulai to that knowledge, things seemed to be getting serious. They say that the Imperial Court is the largest sacred ground in the world. I wonder if it really clashed with Great Thunderclap Monastery, who would come out on top? Chinmu muttered to himself irresolutely before shifting his thoughts away. Can we contact the Hall Masters? Now that every hall is helping disaster victims, it's quite hard to contact them. If we wanted to gather all the halls, it would probably take a month or two. Chinmu shook his head and left without saying anything. Sitting on the back of the Dragon Chelin, he hurried towards Bazhu. Bazhu was about 5,000 miles away, and the journey was long. Even if the Dragon Chelin didn't rest, he would only be able to reach there the next day. But rest was necessary, so he reckoned that he would only reach Bazhu on the night of the next day. If only my treasure ship was still around, it would be so much easier. What a pity it's ruined. Chinmu ordered the Dragon Chelin to rush forward at full speed and promised him a bucket of food every day. The Dragon Chelin's spirit was roused and he sprinted towards Bazhu while stepping on his fire clouds. Night fell in no time, and Chinmu raised his head to look at the aspects of the celestial bodies to determine the direction before ordering the Dragon Chelin to continue on his way. When the sun had risen, the Dragon Chelin couldn't maintain his speed anymore and started foaming from exhaustion. He couldn't run anymore and his speed became slower and slower. Chinmu made him stop and looked around to determine his location. Taking out the geographic map of Eternal Peace, he noticed he was only 1,000 miles away from Bazhu. He let out a sigh of relief and fed the Dragon Chelin. He headed forward at a steady pace, allowing the Dragon Chelin to rest his feet. He didn't walk far before he saw a house in the desolate mountains. The place should be a recently built one since everything seemed new. Chinmu walked over, wanting to knock on the door when it opened and a woman came face to face with him. Both of them were stunned. Mua? The woman with matchless beauty was stunned in place when she saw him. Looking around, she asked bewilderment, how did you find this place? I spent quite an effort to shake off blind and old Ma, yet was actually found by you. Chinmu was surprised and delighted. Granny, why are you here? He suddenly became alert. Are you Granny or Li Qianxing? Granny Sai moved aside to let him into the house. The old devil is temporarily suppressed by me. Even though old Rulai didn't manage to get rid of him, he was still able to injure his vitality greatly, so we are currently evenly matched and thus we made an agreement. He will only come out at night while I'll come out during the day. Chinmu asked suspiciously, if you are really Granny, why did you have to avoid Grandpa Ma and Grandpa Blind? Why do you have to hide here? Granny Sai rolled her eyes at him. Rascal, suspecting even Granny now? If I was the old devil, why would I have to lie if I wanted to harm you? Chinmu thought about it and felt that it was really the case. Compared to Granny Sai, he was pathetically weak. If she was Li Qianxing, she wouldn't need to waste her energy to lie to him. He then walked into the house. If she was Li Qianxing, she could have charmed him with just a gaze with her seductiveness. He was even more of a woman than a woman. This house was very simple as it was just constructed. There was little furniture, and looking around, Chinmu found that the tables were all crooked or slanted. This put him at ease. Granny Sai didn't have deft hands like Grandpa Ma. She could make pieces of clothing, but her carpentry was pitiful, so these tables and chairs were definitely made by her. Qin Mu sat down on one chair to rest and felt uncomfortable as the chair was higher on one side and lower on the other. Because of that, he was absolutely certain that the chair had been made by Granny Sai. He asked curiously, "Why does Granny not want to return to Great Ruins?" Granny Sai shook her head and walked out of the house. After a moment, a few pieces of wood floated into the house as she planned to make a bed. Qin Mu didn't care much about resting and immediately went up to help. Granny Sai was the saintess of the cult, and even if she had lived in disabled elderly village for over 40 years, she had not learned old Ma's craft at all. On the other hand, Qin Mu was an expert in crafting all kinds of furniture. Granny Sai couldn't help, so she went to fetch water from the riverside and came back to polish the bronze mirror. She said, "I can't go back now, what would be the point? In Great Ruins, there's the darkness blocking the way. If the old devil came out to create a ruckus again, how long could the old bones of village chief and the rest last? Wouldn't it be better to just stay here and wear down the old devil's temperament?" Qin Mu quickly finished making the bed and moved it into the house. He saw the mirror was all bumpy from Granny Sai's polishing and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He immediately took the mirror into his hand and transformed his vital chi into white tiger vital chi. After some calculation, his vital chi thread polished it finely and leveled the bronze mirror. He then went to make a dressing table. Granny Sai saw the dragon Chilean sprawled out on the ground in deep sleep and Qin Mu's bloodshot eyes that were filled with exhaustion. She said, "You have hurried all night? Go to sleep first. You won't leave." "I won't." Qin Mu relaxed and went to sleep on the bed. Even though there was no bedding, he was used to sleeping outdoors and fell asleep quickly. It was unknown how long had passed when Qin Mu woke up in a daze and saw Granny Sai spacing out in front of the bronze mirror on the dressing table. She held scissors, which were pointed at her face, in her hands. "Granny!" Qin Mu shouted out in a panic. Granny Sai turned around and placed the scissors down. With a smile, she said gently, "Rulai said there's only one way to destroy the heart devil, and it's to remove his infatuation with this face. Mua, I don't want to harm you anyone, especially you." Qin Mu saw her raising the scissors again, and his tears flowed out uncontrollably. "Granny, it's not your fault. I've never blamed you. I can't do it." Stunned, Granny Sai placed down her scissors with a smile. "Mua, help me do it." Qin Mu got up from the bed and took the scissors from her hand and placed them gently back into her little basket. "It's not your fault, no one can blame you. You've already hidden for over 40 years, never using your appearance to meet anyone." He squatted down and raised his head to look at the face that was so beautiful that there could be no other like it. This was the true appearance of the closest kin that had raised him up. Qin Mu revealed a smile. "If it was me, I could at most persevere for a day or two, I couldn't last 40 years. It's not your fault for growing to be like this. Which beautiful woman would be willing to cover their own face forever and use an old face to meet people?" He stood up and said, "Granny, I will get rid of Li Qianqing. But for now, you stay here. I'll go to Bazhu, something might be happening there." Granny Sai nodded gently. Qin Mu walked out of the room, then turned back with a smile. "Granny, you should eat and drink when you should, don't torture yourself." "Rascal, lecturing me again," she retorted angrily. Qin Mu laughed and kicked the dragon Chilean awake. "Still sleeping? Get up and hurry on." Many people don't realize what the reform was for, why they had to reform their lives. They say, "Wasn't it well in the past, everyone was living comfortably, was joyous and harmonious, while your reforms, aren't they just to satisfy your ambition of an emperor? By offending the blue bloods and the sects, aren't you doing it to expand the territory of eternal peace? All the natural calamities and man-made disasters over the years have been your fault, we've had to suffer all of them because of that reform." But this is a fallacy. In Bazhu Prefecture, Emperor Yangfeng led a group of civil and military officials through a street while looking at workers manning the porridge stall to feed the people lining up for food. Emperor Yangfeng went over and came to the front of a porridge stall. The worker was about to kneel down when Emperor Yangfeng held him back and said, "There are few rules in such cold weather and frozen land. How much is one serving?" "Your Majesty, an adult gets a bowl of porridge, 2 steamed buns, and a ladle of dried vegetables." Emperor Yangfeng nodded and dismissed him. He picked up the ladle and distributed food to the disaster victims, while behind him stood the civil and military officials of the imperial court. He then continued, "We had all lived well in the past, we were never common people. Minister of Agriculture, tell them, before imperial preceptors reform, how many people could be fed with 6 hours of fertile land." Minister of Agriculture immediately said, "Before the reform, 6 hours of fertile land could produce 330 pounds of crops." However, at that time, all the land belonged to influential families, monasteries, and Daoist temples, so there was no land in the hands of farmers. A farmer's family had 7-8 people and they took care of 5 hectares of land, which had grain, fruits, vegetables, and herbs. After slogging for a year and harvesting for 2 seasons, there was no surplus grain, and they could barely fill their stomachs. They could have 1 to 2 meals of meat every month and would starve if they met with natural calamities or man-made disasters. Back then, many elderly would automatically go up the mountain or jump into rivers during years of disaster so that they wouldn't be a burden to their families. Meanwhile, the influential families, monasteries, and Daoist temples were hoarding great amounts of grain and gold. Emperor Yangfeng said, 5 hectares of land to only feed a family of 7 to 8. After painstakingly planting a year's worth of grain, where did it go? Tell them, how many people can be fed by 6 hours of land after the reform? Minister of Agriculture continued, "Your Majesty had ordered imperial preceptor to manage the reform and reclaim all the land. Influential families, monasteries, and Daoist temples can no longer manage any land. An adult male can manage 5 hectares of land, 1 hectare of which would be fertile land. In the recent years, there was a growth in population, so the rules had been changed. An adult male can now manage 2.5 hectares of land and half a hectare of fertile land." Imperial preceptor had also made martial arts practitioners and divine arts practitioners to help with agriculture. To provide a stable crop, rain was provided during drought and water drainage during floods, thus there was no starvation for 160 years. Nowadays, 6 hours of land can produce 820 pounds of crops. 440 pounds are used for the land tax, but farmers no longer find it too expensive to eat meat. 330 pounds, 820 pounds. Emperor Yangfeng picked 2 steamed buns and placed them in the bowl of a starving person before giving him a ladle of dried vegetables while sighing ruefully. "What is Buddha?" "This is Buddha, a living Buddha, a breathing Buddha, the Buddha of all common people. It's not by taking on the title of Rulai or Tao Master and giving talks on chicken soup for the soul would one become Buddha or Tao Master." Minister of Agriculture, let me ask you again, since imperial preceptors' reform was good and the rations have also increased, why are there still starvation whenever a natural disaster breaks out? Minister of Agriculture had a troubled expression and hesitated. "This? Say it." "Yes. Other than the increase in population, there are still things like the eating of meat and wars. Feeding livestock requires grain, as well as feeding strange beasts in the army, training soldiers, fighting wars. All of it requires grain. But the most important reason is still the circulation of cultivated land. There are some pieces of land that were bought back by the influential families, sects, and temples, who then once again became landowners. Grain has once again returned into their hands. The reason why the sects were able to rebel the previous time was because they had the money and the rations, that's why they were so daring. Still, this issue of starvation shouldn't have been so severe. It was all because after fighting the war, the empire's treasury had been emptied and the influential families, sects, and temples refused to give out rations. The effect caused by the previous rebellion of the sects is huge. Emperor Yangfeng turned his head back and took a glance at the officials. Influential families, sects, monasteries, and Daoist temples were always seated high above, eating exotic delicacies daily, talking about wind, flowers, snow, and the moon, chatting about paths, skills, and divine arts, discussing immortality and longevity. There are farmers feeding them, but who of them is willing to lend a hand to those farmers? If the farmers refuse to comply, they will send disasters and calamities on them straight away. Is this snow disaster strange? No, it isn't. When sects ruled their own countries, these kind of snow disasters weren't rare, either. However, it wasn't God sending those calamities, nor was it heaven. It was the sect sending those calamities and disasters to make the common people comply and not dare to rebel. Imperial preceptors' reform made sects have to work for farmers, for merchants. This is what made them displeased, and they didn't want to do it. In the meantime, Imperial Preceptor created more reforms and founded primary schools, colleges, an imperial college. He used them to pass down the abilities of sects to the people of the world, to let them be able to protect themselves, and the sects were even more displeased. They wanted to rebel, to kill people. Little did they think that their ancestors from 8 generations back were all farmers, none of them an exception. Look and listen clearly. I have executed them this time, and if you guys act like them the next time, I will execute you guys as well. The officials I want aren't from those sects that are high above or any experts or Buddhas. The officials I want are those that are able to handle matters in a down-to-earth manner. Scholars must be able to work for farmers, artisans, and merchants. There are actually some scholarly officials who think they are a level higher than others. Damn it, scribe, allow me to say a profanity, damn it, they only know how to grumble and view themselves highly. I wish for more than anything to execute them. The civil and military officials lowered their heads and didn't dare to say a word. 2 scribes looked at each other, both of their expressions troubled. The older scribe then said softly, "Your Majesty, Son of Heaven needs to watch his language. I don't say profanities frequently. Wasn't I really angered, which was why I had scolded people?" "Pardon me, scribe." While he had been speaking, the person in queue for food was a high monk who was holding onto a golden alms bowl with a smile. "That was a very good speech, Your Majesty. However, now that the natural disaster has come, the righteous path is to stop the disaster and save the common people from suffering." Emperor Yangfeng took a look at this high monk and gave him a bowl of porridge, 2 steamed buns, and a ladle of dried vegetables before saying, "Not only was my speech good, what I do is even better. High monk, eat slowly, don't bother the people of the secular world." That high monk agreed and carried his golden alms bowl away. Rulai? The people behind Emperor Yangfeng were stunned when they saw that high monk. This video will end here.